Hola, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse. Thank you for joining us today. We do these webinars periodically where we bring in industry experts to chat about various topics. This one, I think we're going to have some fun with today. So I'll go ahead and get started, and then I'm going to introduce our panelists. First off, when you go into a restaurant, you have to think that not all servers start off multitasking. Not all servers are that person that can take everybody's orders, cover anybody's shifts, know the menu inside and out, know your point of operation system inside and out, and be able to deliver everything perfectly to every person at the table and know what nuances people had on their orders. Not everybody's like that. So in a restaurant, when you have those people, which is a certain percentage, and then you have the other people that are just getting started, that don't remember orders, that can't remember anything they wrote down, that is a common occurrence. Well, the same thing happens in the world of tech. Just look at a couple of these stats. As of today, there are 29,618 AI companies in the US. There are 2,000 generative AI tools hosted by, and there are the 5 top grossing revenue companies that are in the AI circle. Obviously, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, which is Google, and Meta. That's the top 5. And then there's very popular platforms like obviously ChatGPT, Claude, Fathom, Grammarly, all very commonly used. You also have home building specific platforms like Autodesk and Alice and Matterport, Buildertrend and BuildExact and Kojo and TradeTap. There's a plethora of different companies out there that are either dabbling in, fully committed to AI. But with 29,618 AI companies, how many of them are that server that remembers everything? How many of them are just dabbling with millions of dollars of VC money? How many of them are going to be here today and gone 2-3 years from now? That said, there are also some that are excelling and doing really well. In today's day and age, if you think that you are a home builder that's not using AI, you might not be in your day-to-day operations. However, if you have a refrigerator that tells you, when the milk is out, if you have a car that tells you when there's other cars in your perimeter, that's all AI. That's those processes that work. If you have you start to type something into your computer, that's generative AI, where it's actually thinking, it's trying to think in advance. What is this next thing that this person's trying to type? All that comes into play. We're going to talk about that. We're going to showcase a builder up in Wyoming, Smart Dwellings. And we're just going to showcase a little bit of their self-admitted mistakes that they've made over the years and some of their successes they've made over the years in implementing technology, whether it be AI supported or not. And then we're going to have our 2 experts, Barret Davis from Enter Now and Schairer from Foundation, talking about some of the different AI platforms that are out there. So to get this started, let me just start off with Nathaniel over in Wyoming with Smart Dwellings. If we can just get a quick synopsis of what Smart Dwellings is, the market that you serve, the type of homes that you build, et cetera.
Yeah. So nice to be here, Kevin. Thanks for inviting me back. It was a lot of fun in Vegas, and I'm looking forward to this today. So yeah, I'm Nathaniel Lemon. I'm the president of Smart Dwellings. We're a small home builder in Rock Springs, Wyoming. We kind of service the whole southwestern corridor of I-80, several little communities along the way. We're very, very spread out. Deal with winter road conditions and stuff. It's a tough market. On the whole, in the last several years, our area has actually been losing population slightly. So, we were doing that through COVID while everyone else was like gaining people. It was really tough. So it's definitely a challenging market. We're kind of going through a rebirth right now. I had a brother who was part of the company. He has since left. It's just me, and we're kind of reinventing ourselves, as it were. So kind of a little bit of a stressful time, but it's a fun time, and we're learning new things and positioning ourselves for success in the future.
And from a matter of scale, how many homes are you building?
Oh yeah, sorry. So that's a great point. A great question. Last year we actually closed 26 homes. We're going to close, I think, 18 this year. And next year I'm actually only planning on like 13. We're actually actively going smaller, kind of pulling back to right size our company for the market that we currently have.
Okay. So, and from a value proposition, what is your typical price range?
Our average selling price is around $450. I really have stuff starting in kind of the high 3s and going to kind of topping at around $500,000 to $600,000.
So you're not that San Francisco market where you're building a 300 square foot closet for $1 million.
No, we're building anywhere from a 1,200 square foot. The smallest plan we're offering right now is 1,200 square foot on one level, all the way up to some of our bigger plans with all the options can get up around 4,000 square feet. We do a mix of crawl space and basements. So we have admittedly too wide of a product line for the size of builder that we are, but we kind of feel like we have to have a lot more stuff because we're trying to sell across both a broad geographic area and a pretty deep, pretty wide economic range from, a first time entry home buyer to, kind of a nicer move up buyer. So
we're gonna come back to some of that identity. For now, as a thank you for you guys being here, Derek and Barret, could I just get you to give a quick, just little elevator pitch of what your companies do? Derek, I'll start with you.
Yeah, great to be here today, Kevin. So I'm Derek Schairer. I'm one of the co-founders of Foundation, and we are a buyer experience platform for home builders. And really what that means is we help home builders bring their teams and customers online to make them more efficient and provide an enhanced or modern customer experience.
And Barret, Barret, do me a favor, knock out both Enter Now and HomeScribe, please.
All right. So, hey, everybody. I'm Barret Davis. I'm the CEO of Enter Now. We're the largest self-guided tour platform in home building. So if you haven't heard of self-guided tours, we allow a home buyer to go tour the property on demand. So they can tour after staffed hours, get access to the home, go in, see your home, so help sell homes faster. We're a large sort of technical growing company. And so our engineering team also created a company called homescribe.ai, which is a completely free. So there's no, let me put a star there. It's just completely free forever. It's a ChatGPT just for home builders. So it has like a library of prompts or things like that can be really easy to digest for people who just want to try AI for the first time. So it has 300 or 400 monthly users in our space, and a lot of people use our platform to help train new employees or just get their first try on home building AI and things like that.
So Lori commented that Derek is using a filter, which I think is hilarious. No, you are not saying anything crazy. Derek is just always pretty. It's just the way it works. I apologize that you have to also look at me during this chat. It's just how some of us are built, All right, so Derek, let's go ahead and start with you. Can I ask you a little bit about just value chain? What does a home builder need to understand before they even explore AI?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think this is like a great starting point, to the webinar today in this conversation. And I think when builders think about AI, they really need to think about it as a force multiplier. It's not a magic bullet. And so I think before you start to think about investing in AI tools, you really need, as a home builder, really need to map out your workflows. And, that is all the way from like land acquisition to design, procurement, construction, to marketing and sales, to really identify those inefficiencies where AI can come in and help and be a force multiplier. Because really, I think if your operational foundation is broken, it's just going to compound the broken pieces. And I think this becomes more apparent the more sophisticated you get with using AI. If you turn your team loose with Grammarly, they're going to become better writers. And that's a pretty low stakes, low risk to implement some AI, work on it. Then you kind of get into like, something maybe like ChatGPT, where you're creating spreadsheets out of PDFs to help improve your workflows. But if you're starting to put AI across your enterprise, that's a real high stakes, high risk environment. And if your processes aren't dialed in, you're going to start to see that, essentially boil down to garbage in, garbage out. If you have disconnected data, outdated workflows, or siloed decision-making, it's not going to fix those problems, especially as you get deeper into the organization. It's just going to really amplify those types of inefficiencies. Your team's going to start to create workarounds. So I think the best AI strategies, as you're exploring this and starting it, start with a brutally honest assessment of operational friction points and organizational surfacing of what is actually taking place at the line level of business, not necessarily what management thinks or wants to take place. And I think at Foundation, there's a couple key folks in builders that do know pretty much the soup to nuts process, and it's probably not who you think it is. For example, one of the folks within builders that we've identified that knows the whole kit and caboodle is a lot of transaction teams, transaction coordinators, settlement teams. They actually know how the whole process works from start to finish. A lot of times better than your marketers, better than your sales teams, and a lot better than execs who, for right reasons, are maybe a little higher level out of the weeds and not in the day-to-day as some of these folks. So I think when we think about what builders need to do, there's a few things in there, and it starts with good process.
So one little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. These gentlemen I know all of them personally, and they are all just brains willing to give information. So if you have any questions whatsoever that isn't covered, or you feel that something could be expounded upon, please put it in chat. We will pay attention to it. Nathaniel, to that point, not necessarily AI specifically, but I love how brutally honest you are with yourself in the fact that you have had some missteps. Do you resonate with what Derek just said about?
I was like, yeah, that was resonating with me. And the thought that came to my mind is, before you decide to start jumping into some newfangled complex AI, stop and take a look at what you're already doing. How well is your CRM set up and utilized? How well do you use honestly, how well are your people organized? We were talking about this before the call. How well do you organize your email? Are you effective at using the tools you already have? Do you have, a construction management tool like Builder Trend or one of those, or Rezio, or that's only half utilized, and a bunch of the features nobody knows how they use? You've probably got a lot of really low hanging fruit of stuff you're already paying for that you're not using well. And just as sort of to predict the future, if you've already bought tech that you're not using very well, don't go buy more and then just not use it well. Like, utilize what you have. And what Derek was talking about with, documenting your process flow. I mean, that's so critical. And, that's one of the biggest things when we essentially tried growing through COVID, and we went from 2.5 full-time people to 12 in a several year period. And we didn't have that done. And that's the thing that almost brought us down. But, I've got on my desk now, I've got a company manual that we put together. It's pretty thin, but there's all of our core processes, and we've written them down, and we know now this is how we're supposed to do business, at least at a high level. There's a lot more work there, some of the nitty-gritty stuff, but we finally got to that point after not doing it and almost failing, and saying, gosh, we better write down what it takes to build a house, because if we don't, then we try to implement all this tech, it just falls flat.
So talking about building houses and stuff, Barret, when a company like Nathaniel's, or a fledgling builder, or even a well-established builder, they have to establish some clear business goals. But should they feel pressured to adopt AI?
The pressure is a good question. It seems like it's a trend that's not going to be unforgiving. It seems like it's core to employee skill sets. Like, I had to put all my sales team on a call the other day, show them how to download data into Excel and then talk to it in ChatGPT, just because we needed to move faster. We needed to try new things. That way they can do it on their own without involving some technical people. So just as an example, I think AI can help from employee skill sets, just using, helping your own independent productivity. And then as Nathaniel was saying, is that applying certain tools or techniques to business processes that you have documented can go super far. Even, let's just say you're not in the point where you've documented everything, but you might have a problem on the warranty side where nobody picks up the phone after hours. There are solutions for that now, for voice agents, things like that, to take those after-hour calls, submit a ticket. Is it better than a human? No, but if nobody's doing it, there's value there. And so we've been working with some small builders on some of those use cases, and a lot of it is a balancing act between pressure or problems. And if you have some problems that you can't put money towards or people to, or change processes, sometimes AI and trying some of the new things that are out there is a good fit, because technology can solve certain problems. It can smooth out some processes, but also it has the balancing act as well, as previously mentioned, that if you're trying to bring in a new tool and you don't have your processes down, you haven't identified the problems, it might amplify your problems or a gap in your processes. And so it's good sometimes to use vendors in the home building space that know your categories, know your problems, know your people, know your industry, as opposed to maybe just using some of the raw tools off the shelf from some larger companies. So not to plug any of the vendors in our space, but home building, what I've found is a very specific niche. Even if you tried to bring in like another real estate AI tool, it might just be fully trained on residential because new construction is such a niche.
Absolutely. So the smartphone, it has been one of the greatest things that have ever hit our society. You don't need maps anymore. You don't need a Rolodex anymore. You don't need so many different things that a phone can do. However, it's also dumbing us down to where we don't necessarily need to know how to really do anything. So, Derek, should a home builder go big or go home? How should they adopt this stuff? Should they just say, you know what, let's get the biggest, baddest smartphone out there and just go to town? Or should they roll into it with maybe a brick, go into a flip phone, and then possibly into a smartphone? What should they be doing?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to phrase it, Kevin. And I really think like there's some very obvious places to start with AI as you're thinking about rolling it out. And it is not going big, to be honest, Kevin. It is starting small. And when you start to think about these places where AI is really good, especially like Barrett said, in our niche of home building, which I think his point is very spot on, and I think we'll continue to get to here for the rest of the time. But AI, it should not start with an enterprise-wide overhaul. Instead, what builders can do is you can identify highly repetitive, high labor, brute force tasks. And those are things that AI is really good at streamlining or replacing. For example, we use AI to help builders extract and structure data from spreadsheets all the way down to PDFs. And what these used to be were manually double entered across multiple systems every time a home was sold. And we were able to help them really streamline those workflows, get the data to us, read that data, create structure out of PDFs, which before AI was very hard to do. And so I think that's a really good example of some of the unsexy back office brute force work where AI can come in and really help right away. And by focusing on these small, low risk use cases, builders can start to like test AI's impact, build internal confidence, avoid massive upfront investments, and really start to plot a future versus just diving into the pool head first.
So companies will have, and Nathan, your company's going to have policies as far as reaching out to potential home buyers. They visited a model home. Here's our step one, and reaching back out. Here's our step two. I had a builder that did a pretty interesting process, and what they would do is they would punch in the parameters of that visitor. They're married with two kids. They work in the tech world. They travel often for 4 or 5 family vacations a year. These are just things they found out. They have 3 family dogs, and they would put into ChatGPT or Claude those parameters, and then say what would be the suggested outreach to get to elicit another appointment with them. Are you implementing anything like that at Smart Dwellings, or is it just now you've now at least honed into step 1, step 2, step 3 follow up?
I wish I really should have put my wife on this call instead of me because she is actually our chief AI
Yeah.
implementer. She's doing a lot of things with it. I don't know for sure. Maybe she can chime in because I know she's on this
Oh,
call.
she's on the call. I see her on the
She's
call.
on the
So
call, so maybe she can
Beth, are
chime in
you
and tell
doing
us
any of that?
if she's doing that. I know she's using it in a lot of really creative, interesting ways. And kind of like what Derek was talking about extending your capacities, and it's not replacing anything. But yeah, it's great for that kind of thing. Give me an idea of something I do. I know I do a similar thing like the one that I just did yesterday was, hey, I've got a homeowner that wants me to come and do a repair, and I'm not going to do it because it's not valid. So I'm going to tell them no, but tell me how to tell them no nicely, because the way that I would say isn't going to be nice. So give me a professional, polite way of saying no. We're not going to replace your driveway. and it does a whole lot better job of that than I did. So I know that that's kind of an off-topic way that I'm using it, but
Well,
just a
yeah.
little thing that just, it was 6 o'clock at night. My brain was tired. Tell me how to say this thing. Boom. Oh, okay. That's great. So just sort of help me get somewhere and I think what you're saying though is that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. So Barrett, what is a tangible? Is there a tangible way to make AI an easier barrier of entry? Is there a pathway to implement small baby steps possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with sort of two easy options, and then I can also put a link in the chat for what is coming to our space aggressively, which none of us can really avoid, which is that Zillow's sort of implementing a first party application inside of ChatGPT. So I'll start on the simple side. Similar to what Nathaniel was saying, is that ChatGPT or any of the AI products that you can just use naturally today for free are great for rewriting emails, better tone, more clarity. I have horrible grammar. I have it redo bullet points. Sometimes I talk to people way outside my tax bracket. I need to have a much more professional tone than my like engineering chicken scratch. And then number two, which I use a lot, and I actually have my kids using it too. Gemini, which is owned by Google, ChatGPT competitor, you can download it on your phone. It's really good at taking a picture and describing it or searching something. So my kids love to like learn about certain things. So they'll take a picture of it. It'll give back like the history of this butterfly or something like that. I use it a lot for all sorts of things, whether it's work, manual labor, or just like how much is this worth, or like shopping and things like that. So you can take a picture of a shirt, see how much it's worth. You can also do that for your homes. Like you can stand out in the yard and take a picture of it, and it can give you detail about your house. So, like if you're writing a marketing description or something like that, it will look at the roof, it'll look at the siding, it'll put all these pictures together to give you a description. So, just as sort of a litmus test on using some tools right out of the gate for absolute basics, I'd start with ChatGPT for emails or just communication. And then I like the Gemini app on my phone to do sort of like pictures and videos of things to like describe what's going on, or you can ask it how much something costs, or and then get more information about like a type of bug, which my kids use all the time. So
So basically, what you're saying is if I'm driving through a pre-existing neighborhood, I could punch in an address and say, "Has any murders occurred at this home?" Which doesn't occur in the new home building industry. Boom! You can take that home. You will never have anybody that's been murdered in a new home build. There you go. No ghosts.
yeah, absolutely. And then I was gonna put this link in chat just for other people post panel, but Zillow came out with a preview of what Zillow would look like inside of ChatGPT, and so there's always sort of these moments in technology where things really pivot, and when you can just search for, it's coming out with rentals first, but once that sort of takes over, I'm assuming that the home building branch of Zillow will do theirs as well, but you'll just be able to search using English and it'll come back with results of the actual pictures and things like that. And how that impacts people's websites, how they search and discover things online will be very, very interesting as well. So, I know we're talking about basics here. I have a feeling that that'll be a new basic starting next month, is that you can just type in, I'd like a home for 1,200 a month in Arizona, and it'll come back with a list of pictures and the actual listings. And so that's a kind of a good signal for where these things are moving and how these trends are going so quickly.
So in karate, they have different belts. You got your white, the yellow, the blue, the green, the purple, the red, black, brown, whatever. Derek, although he is the prettiest of all of us, I would argue that Barrett might be one of the most tech nerdiest of all of us. He's the most immersed in this world. So let me ask you this question, Barrett. This was definitely directed to you, and Derek could probably answer this as well. But how clean does your data need to be? If you're a home builder, do you need to keep track of how the back end of your website and what kind of XML feeds you're putting out? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, great question. You know, how the data, and first off, Derek is very technical, so I'll let him answer some of these as well. I am a sort of a nerd programmer, so I'll take that hat for this call. But in terms of data itself, the first pylon to sort of think about, or the infrastructure on the bottom, is how's the data stored. Maybe it's just on a spreadsheet. So we work with a lot of small builders, medium-sized, and large companies. Okay, so they all have their own problems. Nobody has it figured out. So small builders may have most of their data on a spreadsheet. Ironically, AI is the best at reading just a spreadsheet. Just simple and easy to understand, usually just columns and rows. And then you might have AI stored in like a complex CRM or a builder trend or something like that. And those systems can export the data back into a spreadsheet. So one thing to note about just clean data in general is that a lot of the systems of record, like a builder trend or something like that, it might look complex from a view standpoint, like to navigate your workflow. But when you actually export the data back into a spreadsheet, it's a forcing function to it'll just give you clean data back. And so if you're working on a specific use case, maybe it's in finance and you just export a financial spreadsheet and then you use ChatGPT to read that and ask questions, you can actually solve your problem too. So clean data has a lot of different ways to it, and a lot of that's how it's stored and then how that data is used. But clean data practices are very important if you want to manage a complex workflow.
So speaking of workflows, Derek, let me point this one back to you. Do builders need to actually restructure or rethink how they, utilize their workflow or implement workflow with in regards, especially with AI?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily rethinking workflows, right? I think it's first mapping out what those look like. And I know I'm harping back on to what I said at the beginning, but I think this is really important. And I think if there's two takeaways of how builders are going to use AI, not just today, but as it gets more sophisticated at an enterprise level, moving forward in the future, it's really these two things. It's I think what I started with, which is map your processes, understand it. You don't need to rethink it, but you need to understand it to ensure that you have the correct policies and procedures in place. And then this helps you understand where the tools can be used. And the second piece is what Barrett just talked about. Data hygiene, data discipline is really important. Those placeholder addresses that we see from time to time, or those placeholder contract data that we see from time to time that nobody ever goes back and corrects, those are where things are going to jump up and bite you. And if you can really start to have great data hygiene moving forward, that is going to help your transition to all of these AI tools. And so, I think that's what's really important. And so, I know I harped on some things here, but I think there's some good news here too. So when we talk about data hygiene, when we talk about mapping your processes, I think the good news for anyone that's on this call or anyone that listens to it is, as you start to become more sophisticated, builders are going to need to pull in vendors to do these enterprise level things. I think that's the reality of it. My recommendation for builders would be, once you get to a certain level beyond your capabilities, don't build it, go find a good vendor. And those vendors are actually going to help you with the mapping, with the data hygiene. And if they're not willing to do that, they might not be the right vendor. Yeah, and I'll try and put that nicely because but that is something that we do, and we will come in and help businesses, whether it's even related to the piece of the business that we're serving. We will help them map their processes to ensure that we're getting a great end-to-end experience internally, to then be able to map that externally to the technology that builders want to use. So, I think that's really important. And as you're thinking about processes, you don't need to recreate the wheel. As you're creating processes and mapping these, think about the 90 to 95% of use cases. Don't try and figure out the 5% of outliers, because you can never plan for that. And by thinking of mapping out the 99 to 95% of your use cases, you're going to reduce software bloat, you're going to reduce complexity and overcomplication, and be able to build for what you and your team use every single day. Keeping it simple is always a really good kind of like motivation. And so I think that's really important as we start to think about like workflows and how the technology is utilized.
So I used to sell, and it's no secret, I come from the motorcycle and bicycle and automobile world before I came to the home building industry. And for a short period of time, I was with Harley Davidson, and I sold motorcycles to Harley Davidson enthusiasts known as the Hells Angels. And they would literally have somebody sitting at the finance desk And when the finance guy would ask them questions, about, X, Y, or Z, they'd have two basically thugs standing behind the guy saying, "We're not answering that question." And then we'd ask them, "Why don't you want to answer this question?" Like, "We don't want to be tracked." And we're like, "Buddy, I got a big surprise for you. If you have this in your pocket, you're being tracked. You can turn off every app you want, and you're still being tracked no matter how you look at it, both your location, your IP address, the whole works." And this is for either one of you two, actually. How does a consumer and a home builder validate and keep secure the data that's out there? Because, in this world of AI, I mean, it's just grabbing data left and right, at will. How can we have that security of knowing that our data is secure and safe?
I'll jump in first. I think home builders, from a sales and marketing standpoint, actually benefit some of the most from these AI tools than like a dentist office or something like that. Because a home builder's marketing website, or your core website, where you have gorgeous pictures of your houses, everything's listed publicly. You talk about your team, your brand, where you build, where it is, all that public available data, the AI is looking at. And how that's structured and how they need to read it is differently. I can touch on that too. But what is unique about home builders is you put all your content out there. You want everybody to know about it. For some reason, we pay Zillow for that data to them to then syndicate, but I just meant that your data is available. So AI is looking at it. So if you did search ChatGPT for who's the best home builder in Dallas, like it crawls the internet, it looks at your webpage regularly. It may not know how to read it correctly, but it tries to summarize that information in real time back quickly to who's the best home builder in Texas. But so that's what I can say, at least on my side of your website's great publicly available data, as opposed to worrying about the sort of the security of maybe like your core financial data. I'll let maybe Derek talk to some parts of that side of it.
Yeah, I think from my perspective too, it's just understanding and vetting who you're working with. I think is really important. Like when it comes to like vendors and data protection, right? I think our stance at Foundation is that we don't own your data. That this is your data. You own it. So then we're working with that versus saying that we take your data, own it, and into perpetuity and can do whatever we want with it, right? So I think just understand who you're working with, how they're going to use it is a way to minimize the risk factor when it comes to all of this type of stuff, and then allows you as the builder to maintain control, to Barrett's point, about where you actually want this to populate and how you want it to populate. So I think that's a really important is do your research, understand who owns the data when you're working with someone and where it's going. And that's going to be one of your best bets to truly understand how to protect it.
Well, let's go into that just for a little bit because data is very important, and in the understanding of not only ownership but how it can be utilized even when it's not owned. So if Nathaniel is a builder and he spends money on XYZ platforms, and his data's out there, they use this data to give him back leads. They use the data to point people toward his homes. Is it ethically challenging for that provider to then give any leads that are coming to Nathaniel's team to other companies that offer his same or similar product line? Or did he pay them for that service, and therefore those leads and that data information is his, that he owns? We really do walk that ethical line, and I see that on a regular basis where a builder will give up all this information to this provider, and that provider says, "Oh, by the way, you're looking for a 6-bedroom house. Here's 4 other builders that also offer that same similar 6-bedroom house."
I wouldn't
Nobody
like
likes that idea.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Maybe Barrett can chime in here a little bit too, because I think he's usually got a good, really, really good read on this type of stuff. I mean, I think too, my stance is everything we do, if that's the case, it should be with the builder's permission, right? This should be transparent up front if that's happening, because maybe there is a customer benefit to doing that the vendor says is helpful, the builder believes is helpful, and they say, yeah, that's great. But if it's, hey, I'm gonna own your data, and then I'm gonna send it out and spam them with a bunch of telemarketing calls that aren't related to home building, might not be the best use case for that data. So I think just a good vendor will be transparent. They won't shy away from these conversations.
Yeah.
They will let you know what is happening with it and be able to come to an agreement of, is this how you want it to work? Is it not? And then you can kind of make a decision as a builder as to if that's a company you want to work with or if there's a solution that you can get to. I think if folks start to shy away from these conversations or be a little dodgy about these conversations, you might want to be really careful of what's happening with your data after it gets put into their system. So Barret, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's great. I think as a leader, or if you are worried about data security, it is good to set rules in your organization around what data can be used by AI. It's totally reasonable. If you're working with a different vendor, and they need certain AI or data sets, I'd say that we're under a lot of scrutiny right now, and so we treat it like gold. And that is a line that none of us sort of cross in terms of like leaking data and cybersecurity principles and things like that. A good example is a lot of the large builders do not allow their employees to use like ChatGPT online or something like that. They don't want their data going into the public sphere of the tech oligarchs, as an example. And so, what some enterprises do is, or some lawyers, may set standards of what data might be okay to be out there, like just general text, general things like that. But we don't want you taking our financial reports, putting them into ChatGPT and asking them questions. We might be comfortable with that at our startup at Enter Now, but maybe for your company, you don't. And so it's good to have, an employee handbook or just something basic around like different AI systems, whether they're public or you're working with a vendor, which types of data they have access to. And you don't have to go crazy here. It's just like, our financial data or our core company results do not need to enter any of these systems. Here's the list. And in that way, your employees are aware. Because nobody really knows what ChatGPT does with it. They say they have memory now and things like that. So they definitely store it. How they use it, no idea. But a lot of those won't show up in natural search indexes. They traditionally find that stuff like on the actual like public internet. They don't really want to use your private data. So there's definitely like a gray area. So like you may search for something in ChatGPT and it'll be using like their public indexes, but you as a regular person, when you're just like putting in a Word document and asking it questions, it's going to store that memory typically just for yourself and not for like the outer globe of people using it. But you're really trusting that large company to do that correctly. And so, I've hit this from a few different angles, Kevin. I don't know how deep you want to go in this rabbit hole, but like there's conferences on this stuff. But from a small builder standpoint, it's good to set some firm lines in the sands like we do at Enter Now. None of our, quarterly documents, none of our financial records, nothing close to QuickBooks can enter any of these systems no matter what. And that's a line in the sand that we set at our companies. So just as an example.
It's funny because, and I do want to expound on that more philosophically than anything else. The speed at which the phone developed is eons, comparatively speaking, to the speed that AI is learning. In a matter of seconds, it learns what we've learned over centuries of time, and it retains it. It has a memory that does not end. It just keeps filing things away, and it can recall and push out any of that data that it has, in its universal AI. I'm speaking generally of AI, but any of these platforms. But that said, home builders can get inundated with this stuff, and there's all these different promises that are out there that vendor X, Y, Z, A, B, and C all push out. So Barret, I'm going to start with you, then I'm going to come over here to Derek. What are some questions that builders should be asking when they're vetting a vendor that is putting out some pretty bold or some ostentatious or just crazy claims about AI and their services? But what could they use to scrutinize a vendor? Any kind of questions that you can think of? Or?
Yeah, these are 3 or 4 that I get all the time is just, how are you using our data outside of just our company? Derek touched on that a little bit around ownership. This is no longer something that vendors sort of shy away from. Like when we enter an agreement or we work with somebody related to our commercial AI products, we like put that out in the contract. Like you own this. This is how we're using it. And so if they're not doing that, it's great to ask those questions. Like I said, a lot of us in our home building space know how technically cynical everybody is. And so it's a very important part of our stewardship. Number two is around who has access to the data. So that was sort of my point around ChatGPT. As a Barret Davis, I upload my Word document for our vacation coming up in July. Who else sees that? Just me? You have memory. How's that stored? Does everybody see that? Can Kevin see my July trip for July 4th? So different vendors have like who has access rights to certain things. Is it used holistically across the whole company for benchmarks, or is it just used for our company? I'd say those are probably the top two questions. And then, I'd probably just start with those two, to be honest. So,
And since you asked that question, I did notice that at 3:45 p.m. you were on the nude beach in the Riviera. So apparently it is out there in public. No, Derek, can you add anything to that? Any kind of questions or clarifiers that a builder would want to ask their provider?
Yeah, I think Barrett hit on a lot of them of like just the basics, especially for like the small builders where I know we're geared towards today. I think also there is the broader question or the bigger question, especially as you kind of move up into the larger enterprise size is like, what is your security compliance like level, and it goes all the way up to like SOC 2 compliance, right? So I think if that's a question, your legal team, your IT team, your technical folks are gonna understand that if that's really important. And so what level of security, are you offering and providing is another possibility. But I think Barrett hit on the big ones, especially for the folks on this call. Like, what are you doing with my data? Who owns it? What do you do once you have it? What are the repercussions and recourse if something goes sideways? Those types of things are all pretty basic. And I think the moral of the story here is like Barrett said, like this is all very transparent from companies that you work with if they're doing things the right way. It is spelled out in Barrett's contract. It's spelled out in our contract in very plain letters. And I think that's what's most important as you're starting to think about like different vendors, applications, et cetera.
And Derek, you actually, and I love this, and I know it's not your original quote, but you had said something about implementation of AI and any technology in your company. Can you recall what that was?
Well, I think I've actually become somewhat famous for just talking about like, is it the crawl, walk, run approach, Kevin? Is that it? For somehow, like that is something I completely stole. I mean, that is not original at all.
Yeah,
but,
I know it's not yours originally.
I use that a lot.
You nail it home.
Yeah, I probably stole it from Barrett. Even internally, it gets attributed to me a lot, which is funny. But I think it's I'm not as smart as Barrett, Kevin. So like I need to think things in a very very simple manner. And the way I think about a lot of the stuff we're talking today is really to take a crawl, walk, run approach. Don't, to use another saying, but don't try and boil the ocean. Start small. You can do things with ChatGPT, with Grammarly, with all of these kind of individual things and well-known things, all the way up to bigger vendors. You can start small with test locations, test opportunities to really flesh out the technology. And so, pick a community, pick a few users, pick a department before you really like go and roll this out broadly. The one caveat as you're thinking about pilot and testing is it needs to be robust enough to get accurate results. So don't necessarily always have a single point of failure and think that's going to be the right thing. But there's definitely opportunities to test it. And then when you do these things, you can use sequenced rollouts, right? We control our own businesses. Builders control their own businesses. You can sequence rollouts. This is not a rocket launch where the whole company has to be live on Thursday at 11:27 a.m. Pacific, right? Like go to a single department, go to a single community, and then expand it slowly from there. And I think one of our best practices and guidance is expose your customers last, right? If this ever makes its way into the customer domain where you're showing some of the results of your work to customers, have your internal teams in there for weeks at least prior before you start to expose this more broadly to your customers. And I think a couple like examples that we've seen and we work with is start with the manual labor intensive tasks like your back office. That's a really good start to place to crawl to get things started. When you go into thinking about walking, move into structured data applications. Barrett said it best. AI loves structured data, and structured data is spreadsheets. And then when you think about running, that's when you start to get into the bigger, probably a vendor integrating AI across the enterprise, optimizing it end to end for decision making from land acquisition to the home buying experience. Right, that is a pretty big task and overhaul, but you don't need to start there. So I really think about it as like crawl, walk, run.
So Nathaniel, talking about crawl, walk, run, I want to kind of wrap things up with you a little bit here. And you have been extremely transparent in some of your missteps that you've made, some of your wins, your successes. We don't have to rehash all those things, but I know a few of them, or one of them that you went after too much technology at once, sometimes even conflicting technology. You tried the over thought process on a website, then you went for the cheap route on a website, then you implemented a proper website, but you had to make those expenditures every single time. So you're throwing good money at bad, if you will. But if you could, for our listeners, could you give us number one mistake that you feel that is really just on a daily basis reminds you of not to do that again? What would that one mistake be?
I mean, everything that Derek was just talking about, we did the opposite, run, walk, trip and fall on your face. No, but really, the biggest thing at a high level, I think the best way to summarize it is we got so wrapped up in trying to use technology to get faster and get better and get more efficient. We bought technologies that were just, they're just, I like what Barrett talked about outside our tax bracket, they were designed, we bought technology that's designed for much bigger companies in different markets. We weren't really tuned into our market, and we're in here trying to implement, very, very complex ERP systems when our competitors don't have websites, And so we tried just putting things in place, and the one, that just really weren't a fit for us. They weren't a fit for our budget. They weren't our customers and vendors don't get them. Time and money implementing things that frankly we just didn't need. And going all the way back to this whole conversation of had we started with, okay, what are the actual pain points? What do we actually need to do? We often got really hung up on trying to make things more efficient without really asking the question of, to what end? Just this morning, I was out doing something on site, and I was like, I just got to come up with a better way to do this. And then I stopped myself. I was like, wait, this thing is something I'm going to maybe do. It's going to be something I'm maybe doing like 8 houses this year. How efficient do I really need to get at doing this? Or can I just take an hour and figure it out every time? Because it's 8 hours for the whole year. And I might go, old me would have gone and thrown 20, 30 hours in implementing some new system to make this thing really efficient that I then don't do often enough. So in terms of, wins, we've unwound all of that. We literally shut off a very, very expensive advanced ERP system and went back to spreadsheets and some very, very simple builder software, which we implemented. I think from the perspective of how much chaos and confusion was going on around us with ownership change and getting rid of employees. I mean, we went from 12 people down to basically 4 in just a few months. We implemented the stuff we have now, and I think very, very quickly. And I think for where we are, we're using it pretty well. There's always things to do better, but we're implementing it pretty well. And I think we've been able to really change our thinking and how we evaluate. We're not done with technology. We didn't just go hey, we're going back to paper and spreadsheets.
Slate and chalk.
Spreadsheet system right now is a spreadsheet. It's a spreadsheet of all things that are open. We talk about it once a week. In the back of my mind, I'm going, there's got to be a faster way to do this. And I'm just kind of yeah, let's work the simple system for a while first. Make sure we know what we're trying to do. Then let's look at a more sophisticated solution.
Well, I'd like to point out another one of your wins that you're not even touching on. And that is the fact that we keep hearing in the news that there's certain markets. I mean, obviously, Florida hits the news quite regularly as of late of having tons of inventory and home sales slowing and people having to offer incentives to be able to move homes. You're actually selling homes.
We are actually selling. And so it's funny. We built we sold 26 homes last year. Didn't make any money. Nothing was profitable. I mean, we're moving homes, And then, things really slowed down. And so we let go of a lot of our people and we've done all these changes. And we have sold like six or seven homes in the last, like, we track a rolling 13-week scorecard. We've got like seven sales. So I go back and look at that. I'm like, crap, we're actually selling at the same rate, like the last year. Now the goal is to get profitable and, kind of control the chaos. But yeah, we're very, very grateful. The market has stayed relatively strong. I mean, we're still fighting for every sale. It's not easy by any means. I've got a fantastic salesperson, which is my wife, Beth, that's on this call. Got to give a huge shout out to her because she's really leading the charge with most of that. I can take none of that credit, but she's implementing the tools that we have well and getting sales in what is a very challenging market. So, well, frankly, we wouldn't be in business today if that weren't going for us. So we're very, very grateful for that.
Beth earns her keep is basically what you're saying.
Oh, she more that and more. She's
she provides the a little kiss. She blew a kiss to you. Derek and Barret, please do me a favor and give us your final thoughts here. We'll start with Derek. We'll finish with Barret. And if you want to connect with either one of our panelists today, we will have on screen headshots with QR codes you can scan in and contact any one of them. Derek, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I have two final thoughts just around AI for these builders. For the builders that are attending this call, it's one, remember, humans won't change habits unless incentivized or required to do so. Your software changes should be the incentive enough because it makes them more efficient or more money. If it's not doing that, you might need to really think about it and think if it's a really a good thing to implement. As was just mentioned. The second piece is AI should not be a blind leap. AI is about de-risking decisions, creating efficiencies, and scaling smarter. And so go in with that mentality, and you'll be able to crawl, walk, run to a good place.
Barret.
I'll jump in next. So if I were to leave everybody with some homework or maybe an opportunity for your different teams, is that and I stole this from somebody else, but at Enter Now, for all my teammates, and we're very AI first, like we try to do most of these things, but I realize that people aren't taking advantage of more advanced tools. So we're actually doing a summer of AI. So I enabled some different tools in Google and like Microsoft Office. So like all of our things now have like co-pilots, and for everybody's different rules, all the way down to accounting. I want people to do 3 different things of their job that they didn't do with different AI tools. And by the end of June, we're all going to have a presentation on how we got better. And what I learned from other people or other leaders that implemented this sort of summer of AI or a month of like testing was that the output that everybody gave wasn't great. But the thought exercise for all of your employees or your teammates or your company was it. It's the gaps of where they could help solve with the new tools that they got. And so that sort of thought process in trying some of the new AI tools led to a lot of new innovations. I've already heard things from my teammates only a few weeks in on things that help them sort of speed up their job, whether it was replying to support tickets or filing like collection things, just simple basic stuff. But just wanted to leave that with the audience of like, if you wanted to challenge your teams or use it for yourself, some people are doing like a summer of AI and like a monthly report. And it really helps people kind of think about their job and how they might leverage some of the tools that are available that are free. So.
All right. So in closing, number one, thank you for everybody being here. But what I want you to think about in the world of people thinking that AI is going to take your job, it's not going to take your job. It's going to make it better. It's going to make your processes smoother. It's going to make your efficiencies more efficient. But there are some people out there that have that thought process. Their job's just going to be taken away, and they are named typewriter. They're named rotary dial phone. They're named paper maps. Yeah, they're gone. They're never going to come back again. But there are replacements. So keep in mind that there is a way to implement AI in your world, in the home building world especially. So thank you all for your time. Derek, Barret, Nathaniel, thank you. Well, we appreciate your expertise and your willingness to share your knowledge.